Hi, welcome to Cinema Then, Cinema Now, the film series with lively discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach cinema studies at the College of Staten Island. Today, we continue our Czech New Wave Film Festival. We'll be seeing Jan Němec's Diamonds of the Night, taken from a novella by Arnošt Lustig. This horrific tale of two young men trying to escape from a death camp train is, I believe, a masterpiece of sensuous cinema. It's also on the list of permanently banned films in Czechoslovakia. After the film, we'll be discussing those features of the film and other matters with two guests. We have the privilege today of having Arnošt Lustig, who wrote the novella from which the film is being taken, and Professor Leonard Quart. Enjoy Diamonds of the Night. Welcome back to Cinema Then, Cinema Now. I hope you enjoyed Diamonds of the Night. We have two guests, as always, and I'd like to take this moment to introduce them to you. First of all, we have Professor Arnošt Lustig. Arnošt teaches creative writing at American University. He's also a novelist and short story writer. We'll be getting into that in a great deal of detail. I might want to first say about that, however, that he recently won the National Jewish Book Award for the second time for his most recently published work in English, the novel The Unloved. Also among recent awards is an Emmy for a documentary called Precious Legacy about a museum in Prague. And even further, he's recently been chosen by Robert Redford's Sundance Institute to have one of his scripts developed, a script taken from his novel, A Prayer for Katerina Horizova. I'd also like to take this moment to point out that one of the, among many reasons we have Arnošt here, is that it's his novella, Darkness Casts No Shadows, which has recently been republished in English by the Northwestern University Press, that serves as the basis for the film Diamonds of the Night that we've just seen. And as you may have noticed from the credit sequence, Arnošt was co-author of the screenplay. We'll be talking about that in just a minute or so. My second guest is my colleague, Professor Leonard Quart from the College of Staten Island. It's Leonard's second appearance on our show, as a matter of fact. He's an associate professor of cinema studies at the College of Staten Island. About a year and a half ago, a book was released that he co-authored called American Film and Society Since 1945. Leonard's currently at work completing another book, How the War Was Remembered, which is a book about how the Vietnam War was represented on film. In addition, Leonard is associate editor of the distinguished film journal Cineast. Okay. Well, since Arnošt, since we have the good fortune of having you here, I think we should start with some background materials on this, on Diamonds of the Night. First of all, when did you write the novella? Where does it come from in your experience? And then how was it received initially?
Okay, number one, first time it really happened to me. I am one of the boys.
Okay.
So the timetable was given by life. Now I only had to select the right things for a novel because life as material is too rich. Mm. And literature has different rules than life. So I made a selection that everything what happened to us 3 times will be mentioned only once. It was very easy to write because I really took it from life, And I wrote it while being a reporter in Radio Prague during my breaks during a week. And once I came at 4 in the morning, and the cleanings ladies were really nice to me. They gave me coffee, and when they saw that I'm working, they didn't clean the office. And then it was published as a part of the book called Diamonds of the Night.
Right.
Therefore, the title of the film. It was a collection of 10 stories, which in America was published 9 stories, Diamonds of the Night, and 1 story, Darkness Cast No Shadow.
It's published separately.
It
so
was
I mean,
published
if anybody wants to, to get these works, they'll find that now in America there's a paperback called Diamonds of the Night,
Yes.
which is the 9 short stories, and then the novella from which the film is taken is published separately, as the viewers just saw,
Yes.
as Darkness Cast No Shadow.
Darkness Cast No Shadow. Then Němec was Němec was a young movie director, and he was in love with it. He was then in love with 2 American writers, with Faulkner and with Hemingway, because both of them dealt with time and memory. And Hemingway somewhere mentioned that life for him has 3 dimensions: presence as an action, past as motives for the action, and future as an impact of the action. And he found it in this story. Of course that he found it in this story because, for 2 reasons. One was that life is that way.
Right.
And second, because I was also in love with Hemingway and Faulkner, and I was 20 years old, and I learned as much as possible from both of them. And it was like that they discovered it for me. But Němec was only 20 years old, so I told him, look, Němec, you are really young, you have my word, you will get it, I'm not going to give it to anyone else, but wait few years. So he, in the meantime, he made a short story from Diamonds of the Night, A Bit to Eat, and then after 5 years, at 25, he made this film.
And suspicious, I mean, debut as a feature film for someone of 25.
I think that he was full of his time. And the time was that if you are born from a wrong mother, first of a Jewish or a Gypsy or a Slavic mother, later from a bourgeois mother, that your entire destiny will take a different direction. So in many ways he felt Jewish, in spite that he's not Jewish. And he felt bourgeois because he was of bourgeois origin. His mother was an optometrist, a doctor, and his father was an architect. So he was a very bourgeois, of very bourgeois origin. So he felt this story ideal for him to express that if you are born into a wrong society, that you simply will be an outcast. And for me it was very good, because on one hand I wanted to show what happened to Jewish kids, but on the other hand I wanted to say that not being Jewish doesn't save you, that it's only a bad luck in a certain time, and he made it universally. What was also intended in my story. So he was an ideal filmmaker for me, and because we were not in a hurry, we had 5 years to prepare the screenplay, and while my story relies on dialogue, a lot is revealed on dialogue, Němec wanted to say as much without dialogue as possible. So we were a good couple. We really completed each other, and I am happy with the film, because look, after 20 or 25 years, this film today is stronger than it was when it was made, and it speaks to us.
I had not seen the film in several years. I taught it before, and all I can do is echo what you've just said. My memories of it were as a film of incredible skill, of incredible human power. And as I was watching it in recent days, I was even more impressed with it. It really seems to grow over time. How was the film? We're really gonna get to our friend Leonard in a few seconds, but I still want to get some more of this background information out of you. How was the film received initially in Czechoslovakia and also its international reception?
I tell you, in the beginning, it had two receptions. One was enthusiastic and one was an outrage. People, young people, were in love with that film without knowing why. Something spoke to them with some secret language of images and of a story where old people in charge are killing young people for no reason. But there was a cliché about an anti-fascist war, and all those generals and colonels and soldiers and survivors and former prisoners said, this is not our story. Why should this represent us? And we were saying it doesn't represent anyone else than two boys who were outcast. And we were very lucky because Politburo, who's confiscating and who confiscated now the film, when they viewed the film, the first secretary was a man who was in a concentration camp. And he said, yes, it's necessary to show to people so that they would appreciate what they have today, how bad it was in the past. So he, for other motives, was pushing the same things as we did, but for different motives. And because he was the first secretary of the party and president of the republic, so the film went. Now, internationally, I was sent around the world with that film, and it was loved in Japan, for instance. And they liked it. In '67, I was sent to the United States of America. And in United States, also, young people liked it. I was showing it at the universities. And they understood again that here somebody speaks to them with their language without them being able to say why. So, international, it was received as a classic, immediately, but not masses were pouring into the movie theater. I remember that once we were in a theater and we were the only people who remained with Němec. It was shocking, but such is life, and this is the fate of that film.
We should also just talk just for a moment about Němec's fate. He's now also living in the West, living in California. He's recently been an advisor on the film version of Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being, but we all hope that Jan is going to soon be making a feature film here. But it has been quite a while. I mean, this film, and of course his other most famous film, A Report on the Party and Guests, which we were unfortunately unable to have on this series. I think they're both band films, but they're also both classics of the cinema, most generally and most particularly of the strength of European cinema in the '60s.
I would say that it's connected with Němec's disposition. On one hand, he's an extremely disciplined artist with a stress under the word artist, and he simply refuses to do what he doesn't feel would be the best. He's not a child of commercialism.
Right.
What doesn't mean that he doesn't need money. But I think that from his generation, he's definitely one of the most talented, and I wouldn't hesitate to give him any story of mine to make it. But there is one thing, you know, in America, here we are making films which can pay for themselves. And when Ilya Kazan was in Prague and saw Diamonds of the Night, he said to Němec, look, you would never get money in America for such a film, but I am very happy that this film exists. George Stevens, when he saw Diamonds of the Night, I am invited to America because of Transport from Paradise and Diamonds of the Night. He immediately took care for the invitation for me as a screenwriter after seeing these films. But 2 months ago, Němec was with a very, very well-known producer, and he said, Mr. Němec, don't show me such films. We are interested in other films. So Němec really is somewhere in the middle. But I believe that he will get his opportunity. He's only 50 years old, and that he will make a good film.
Great. You know, I'm sorry to have neglected you for so...
I'm learning a great deal from Arnošt, so...
That's great. You know, but now, since you aren't Czech...
that's right, I don't have first-hand experience.
But you do have a great deal of experience of European film of the 60s and political film and film that's centered around the Holocaust experience. What makes this film distinguished to you, Lenny?
A lot of things do. One, the film's absolutely unsentimental, not the way commercial films have handled Holocaust, or I shouldn't use Holocaust, universal experience of oppression. For example, Boys from Brazil, or Sophie's Choice. It has no melodrama. There's almost a minimalist quality. The narrative is minimal. There's minimal dialogue. There's almost no underlining. The film is purely visual in nature. It handles the kind of subliminal flash cuts and more extended flashbacks brilliantly, weaving the present and the past, and at the end the future, in this kind of brilliant mosaic of images. Handled on each showing, I agree with you absolutely, each showing the film gets stronger. And I'm just screening it on tape, so I wonder what it feels like utterly in the darkness in some dark cavern. The emotional impact of it.
You know, since our viewers, of course, have just seen it on their home, I think it's a really strong point of yours that this is a film that cries out for you to immerse yourself in the full sensuous experience of it as a film, because as those boys are running through the woods, and it's as if you not only can feel what they are feeling, the whipping of the leaves against them, of the branches, but you want that larger-than-life experience. I mean, I don't have any regrets that we're able to get this film to a public.
No, it works. It works beautifully from the opening, very close-ups, tracking along with them, providing a fantastic sense of immediacy and a kind of sensation of running with them, to later on to full shots of them running in the woods where you move back and look at them, to almost surreal shots, which I suppose they have a literalism. They're climbing up a hill of stones, which almost feels like Sisyphus climbing up a hill of stones, which is eternal in nature. To a montage when they're in the rain and there's just a moment of life coming in, and the camera begins to make a montage of roots, branches, and the bark, and the whole bottom of the tree. The film has a kind of richness of texture and sensuality, which really is unique. It's a very brief film. It's a film, I think, 70 minutes, 75 minutes in length. At the same time, it has a kind of cumulative impact, an impact which on purpose, I did screen a number of other films working in the same area, though Arnošt says that this film cannot be called a Holocaust film. This has universal implications. But I did look at Shop on a Main Street, which may also have universalist ambitions, but I think is more defined in its ethnicity, clearly with Ida Kaminska in the role. Now, that is a more probably accessible film with a much larger general audience than Diamonds in the Night.
Indeed, a winner of Academy Award for Best Foreign Film.
And clear, but the difference is very clear. I could go through the Shop on Main Street. It has its effectiveness, but clearly there's a sentimental layer in the film, which this film does not go near. There's something tough-minded in the film as well as sensuous. I'm just struck by what he does Němec with movement, how he both works the present, tracking along with them, often in the tightest close-up, where he only tracks the parts of the body rather than even giving a headshot, but just the back itself, to flash cuts and flashbacks back to memory, where there's also constant movement, movement on trains, or especially the lengthy track along through a trolley car, or as the trolley car goes past some beautiful Prague streets, and also boys tobogganing down a very large hill to just distinctive architectural spots within Prague. The film has a fantastic sense of flight and movement, and the metaphor of flight, of course, literalness of flight, as both as metaphoric reality as both as literal reality, is what the film is about on one level. Each time I view the film, it disturbs me how rarely films like this are revived, and not to do an advertisement for the show, but I think it's very, very important that films like this are shown over and over again. That as different, for example, like Sophie's Choice. Take a film like that, a competent film by a competent American director, Alan Pakula, a nice use of light and shadow, literate, intelligent, well acted. At the same time, it at least there defines the Holocaust, but tries to universalize it, because it has a Pole who speaks German, who is not even a resistance fighter, who faces the camps rather than a Jew or a political, still turns it into melodrama. Has extremely carefully composed Auschwitz scenes in sepia and in muted color, is so careful in its formal qualities, and somehow feels bloated and inflated. Works along the melodramatic choice about her choosing between which child will survive, and is so different than Diamonds in the Night, which essentially is understated. The whole quality of the film is understated.
Yeah, Arnošt, I want to turn to you to ask about some specific things about when you and Jan were working together on this film. I spoke to Němec about this film several years ago. One of the things he told me about being a student at the Film Academy in Prague was that he and his fellow students had access to films that were not broadly screened in Czechoslovakia, not necessarily for reasons of censorship, but simply these were films that came to the country so people would see whether they would get a distributor, whether they would be distributed or not. Now this film looks and feels so much a part of the innovation in European film of the 60s. When you two were working on this, had you seen? I mean, we talked about Faulkner and Hemingway as important models. So I don't want to take anything away from, the distinctiveness of this film. That's not what I'm trying to do at all. When I think of the Holocaust, when I think of tracking shots, I think of something like Anna René's Night and Fog. We had discussed that. Was that film anywhere in the background for this, or was?
I tell you, Němec didn't need any film in his background. He had the reality in the background. In Europe, if you say World War II, so immediately it jumps to everyone's mind what happened. It was really horrible. It was a Nazi terror. It was not a selective terror. It was a mass terror. They were ready to shoot all men in a village. They were able to take all the Jews from one quarter because they had nice apartments. It was a horrible terror. They killed 10,000 men and women, university teachers, writers, composers, because one Nazi police general was shot. So Němec didn't need to be influenced by reality, because reality is part of his mind. But he was very much influenced how Europeans and Americans are reacting. Okay. So he saw, for instance, I know exactly what he saw. He saw Bresson, Jean Renoir, Japanese filmmaking, which he saw a film where there was no one word even, and he was fascinated with that film. He told me that it was called The Island.
Right.
And there was, so he wanted to make it without words.
Shinoda.
And I told him, you must be crazy.
This is the writer's point of view.
Yes, it's impossible because they have to speak. He said, how? I said, like an animal would speak if an animal would be able to speak, because the woods and the society are turning them into animals. So how would a dog speak to his female? He would say, come close, it's cold, I am hungry, give me, go, come. Like an animal or a very primitive man or even a child, helpless, only shouting. So he accepted this concept of dialogues. We have no dialogues. They are not exchanging philosophy.
No, right.
Only, I am cold, come closer.
Come closer, I think, is the first thing they say to one.
Because this formula was very, very understandable to him. And, you know, from American films, I would say that he got the feeling of brutality. From English films, war films, feeling of understatement. I learned this understatement from the English. I think that an artist learns from wherever he can.
Right.
Yes. Except the difference of brutality between that and an American film is that the brutality here, I suppose, feels so organic. Doesn't feel like some genre contrivance or some predictable genre convention. I loved what he did with the senile old men, whose brutality is also bound, my sense of it, with some memory of potency that they once had, whose brutality is built on their basic conformity and indifference to outsiders, to outcasts, to other human beings.
Which comes back to what Arnošt was saying about an animal, because the whole way in which the hunt of the two young men is conducted is just as a hunting lodge convention, and that's the
a predatory.
Němec felt, as we all did, that Nazism really is taking man 100,000 years back, where man was an animal. That Nazism is ruining the concept of life, that it goes back to the most primitive, atavistic feelings of man, so that old men, senile, if they can kill the young ones, they would, for the sake of survival. And because this scene with the old man happened really to me, they were so old. I was the one who was dragging my friend to the top, and they were shouting, halt, halt. And I said, no, because I couldn't believe that people so old would be able to catch us. They would be able to kill us.
Let me ask, would the implications of that sequence go beyond the Nazis to the party, to the purge trials of Slansky in '52, to other purge trials that go on in the '50s? Are the implications extend from Nazism to the communist apparatus?
I tell you, even if you wouldn't intend, unfortunately, we didn't intend it, but it works in that way, because, you know, in another film, which you are going to show, there is a sentence that the tyrants, history teaches us that tyrants must go under. And the censors asked us, what do you mean by this? What kind of tyranny and despoty you mean? I said, of course, there's the Nazi one. The misfortune of our time is that politically, these socialist regimes, which started really with hope of millions of people, degenerated into something what's so close to Nazism. But if you would say it to someone in a communist country, he would hate you, because this is the last thing he would accept, that it's close to Nazism. But it is, not because they would like to have it, they would hate it. But the nature of despoty and tyranny brings them together. So this film really proves that a Hungarian boy, a Mongolian, a Russian, Chinese two boys are today in the same position, because when the society is against you, what can you do? When society makes an animal from you, so you learn to go back to your animal instincts. They are three most important instincts.
I wanted to say that the film has almost two alternative endings. It has them ostensibly being shot, and a long shot of them lying on the ground, and of course another ending where the old men taunt them and shoot off the guns, and they move on to eternal flight and eternal dreams. And metaphorically, as a fable and as a metaphor, it's extremely powerful because it moves that the outsiders are in constant eternal flight.
I will explain it to you how it really was, because it happened to me. So I couldn't shoot myself in a story because I am too superstitious. But on the other hand, according to all rules of literature, Aristotle and so on, a tragedy must end with a dead body. Otherwise, it's not a tragedy, you don't feel sorry and so on. So we discussed it with Němec. And I said to him, kill them, but in a very foggy way, so that it would be a symbolical death, and it would be like sleep, exactly what you said. So he did it very well, because the real motive of those old men was, let them go into the woods and let them die as wolves, because it's a waste of bullets.
Is that what happened to you?
This is what happened to us. We were so weak that they made a joke from a...
Really?
This is what happened. They took us out naked, nude. What they said, take off and take it under your arm. They wanted us to walk naked to our death.
These were Sudeten Germans.
Sudeten Germans. And the head was a Czech traitor. Nobody understands because the leader has a Czech officer's uniform. What is
the mayor is
the mayor, right? And they said, and now walk. And we were counting. We were happy that they are going to shoot us because it was not life. We were starving for 6 days, no food. So finally, Němec said, this is good for me because I will let them enter the darkness and it will be the ultimate freedom. So I said, perfect.
It's perfect. You know, and you know what we have here? We have a perfect time to end our show on Diamonds of the Night. Now, I'm glad we could cover all of this. If you'd like more information about cinema then, cinema now, or about graduate studies, that is studies, graduate or undergraduate, at the College of Staten Island, please drop us a line. Let me give you that address. Cinema then, cinema now, the College of Staten Island, New York, 10301. Let me give that to you again, okay? That's Cinema Then, Cinema Now, the College of Staten Island, New York, 10301. Well, Arnošt, it's been a great honor and privilege to have you here to tell us about everything from the basis in fact to the collaboration. Lenny, as always, it's a pleasure having you here and with your knowledge of film. Well, I hope that you at home find that our discussion here leads you to thought and discussion that you enjoy. Bye-bye.